Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. We have now turned the page and it is Giants versus Jets week. So they play each other on Saturday, but first they had joint practices this week. One of them today, which was in Florham Park at the Jets facility, and another one tomorrow, which is at Quest Diagnostics, the Giants facility, which I will be at. So I'm going to recap that practice tomorrow. Today, we're going to talk about day one and what went down because there were some good things and there were some bad things. So let's start with this. Some injury updates from Brian Daboll and who was out on the field. So the good news is that Cordell Flott and Darius Slayton and Bo Collins were all good and they were back at practice today. So was Dexter Lawrence, very important. Now, I don't know how many snaps he got, but I do know from some of the beat writers that he was on the field at least for a few plays with the ones. So that's important. Now, the concern here is that there were a lot of players who did not practice. Wide receiver Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver Daquan Felton, wide receiver Malik Neighbors, who we're going to talk about in a second, running back Cam Scattaboo, cornerback Trey Hawkins III, cornerback Drew Phillips, and offensive lineman Evan Neal. Now, out of this group, obviously it's disappointing to see guys like Neal and Hyatt because they're guys who are going to make the roster, but who potentially have the opportunity to fight for a starting role in some capacity. So these snaps and these joint practices are extremely important. And look, there's nothing that they can do to speed up the recovery process. It is what it is. It's just unfortunate that they're missing really valuable time. So that's definitely a disappointment, but hopefully they're going to be back at it soon. I think the good news here is that Cordell Flott is back. From what I understand, Banks was getting most, if not all of the reps with the ones today, but I'm curious if there was any type of rotation with Flott. And because I wasn't there, I don't have specific confirmation on this. I'm kind of just reading through everyone's tweets of who is there and what they're saying in regards to the players. So, definitely a disappointment about that. I want to talk about Neighbors because obviously this is disappointing as well. So on August 6th, Malik Neighbors left practice early. Now, he was out there, he was making catches, he was in team drills, one-on-ones, 7-on-7s, like doing everything. And then basically in the middle of the practice, he kind of just disappeared off the field and never came back. Now, when Daboll was asked about it, he said, well, this is all part of the plan. Him, Dexter Lawrence, some of these guys who are working back from injuries, we have specific plans for them so they're not practicing every time, getting all the snaps, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine, makes sense at the time. However, it is almost a week and Malik Neighbors is not back. So that is interesting because part of the plan from what we've seen from him at practices does not have him missing a lot of practices. And from what I also understand, he didn't travel to the Bills game because he was getting treatment. So, Daboll is very tight-lipped about all of this. I don't know if it's the toe thing flaring up. I don't know if it's the shoulder thing where he left practice and then ended up coming back a day or two later and seemed to be okay. We don't know. We might never know. But everyone keep your fingers crossed because we need Malik Neighbors. So with that being said, I want to go into the offensive recap because the biggest thing that was the consensus across the board from Giants and Jets beat writers is that in the team drills, the 11-on-11s, the Giants starting offense versus the Jets starting defense, the Giants offense was not good. Had trouble moving the ball, had trouble running the ball. There were dropped balls, pressure on the offensive line. Russell would have been sacked at least once, probably a couple times. So it sounds like there were definitely some issues there. So that's why I really wanted to know if Darius Slayton was on the field because, the offense is obviously not the same without Malik Neighbors. We all know that. But Darius Slayton is another good wide receiver. He's better than Daquan Felton, than Bo Collins, than, Amir Smith-Marset or any of these other guys who are fighting for that roster spot. And there's just no question about that. Darius Slayton is better than all of them. So, obviously there's a little bit of concern there. But I did get confirmation that Darius Slayton was on the field because later he did make a play and was reported as getting a catch, which I believe was a touchdown. So I want to go through some of the tweets that I saw, but the consensus from everyone is that the defenses both won the day. The Giants and the Jets were significantly better than both teams' offenses, which is good and bad, right? This is what we want to hear. We want to hear that our defense and guys like Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter and Brian Burns are having their way with the pretty good Jets offensive line. And then, for the Jets, it's great that their defense was doing well, but also we don't want to hear that our offensive line looks like crap after going an entire game against the Bills without a single sack. 51 pass blocking attempts, not a single sack. And Joshua Zudu was on the field. And I I'm not doing that to just like shit on him, but I want you guys to understand that he's not a good tackle. He's not. If you've watched Giants football over the last year or two, you know that. So the fact that he was on the field and played as well as he did and didn't allow a sack says a lot. But today was a different story. So let's go through some of the offense. So this is a tweet from Nick Falato. The Jets offense looked rough against the Jets defense on the first 11 on 11. Wilson was sacked twice. McDonald and Tufeli, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't pay that much attention to Jets players. There was a holding and a pass batted at the line of scrimmage. The Giants couldn't do much passing. They did find a little bit of success on the ground. The highlight of the period was an explosive Singletary run off a cutback. Overall, it was lackluster. So that's been the consensus. The other thing that I saw, which I want to talk about because I think this is really important, especially in the context of people saying that the Giants should trade away Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is the one who, after these bad 11 on 11 drills, got the entire offense together and gave them some sort of pep talk and told them to get it together, figure it out, we're a team, we're better than this. Whatever he said to them, it sounds like it worked because after the 11 on 11, they went to the red zone drills where the Giants offense had a lot of success in the red zone. So let me pull up this tweet for you guys. But actually, before I do that, I found another tweet that's their second offensive 11 on 11 drill with the starters and second stringers. So I want to talk through that. So the second 11 on 11, mildly better, but still rough, also from Nick Falato. Singletary had another quality backside cut for a nice gain. Dart connected with Theo Johnson on a deep 7 that would have went for 35 plus yards. This was against the Jets' second team. But overall, the passing attack struggled again. Now, this is Russell Wilson's and the ones red zone drills. So the last 3 plays from the offense against the Jets defense, I guess they did 5 plays in the red zone total. The last 3 were the best for the Giants. Touchdown to Theo Johnson, Singletary touchdown run, and a touchdown to Slayton. So they were efficient in the red zone, which ultimately is going to be the most important thing for this Giants team, especially after everything we've seen over the last couple of years that they seemingly don't know how to score points. So that's important. But again, not overall great, but let me pull up how Dart did. So from Dart with the second team offense in the red zone. He missed Cambry on a deep flag to start the period. He was checking plays and rearranging the offense based on the defense, which is great. This is something that I really want to see Dart continue to improve upon. We've all talked about this extensively. There were 2 ruled touchdowns, one which was to Jonathan Ward, the new running back that they signed, a catch in the flat, and the other was a Zach Pascal back shoulder that was well placed, although Nick says that he's not sure he got both feet in. There were a few scrums, Stinney versus Mathis, and a couple others, but it sounds like nothing got out of hand and there were no crazy fights, no helmets off, no punching, nothing like that, which is good. We don't need to risk any injuries because players are fighting. The last thing he has here is that Izudu went down but was okay and then ended up getting a false start. The other thing that was noted was that James Hudson went down at one point and left with the trainers, but he did come back on the field, which was really important. The question that I had there was with him out, was it Joshua Izudu or Marcus Bowe getting the reps at left tackle? I do not know. I am waiting for some sort of confirmation on that, and we could talk through it tomorrow. But this is why I like to go to practices, because that would have been the number one thing that I was looking for with James Hudson out there. And I'm doing my best to get through everyone's tweets, but I haven't seen anything from anyone about who was the starting left tackle with James Hudson down. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk through the defense, because the Giants defense did really well, and this is from the Jets starters red zone period, like we just discussed with the Giants. Brian Burns gets a sack. The play wasn't blown dead, so it ended up being a completion to Breece Hall. Obviously would have been a sack in a real game. Braylon Allen run for no gain. Darius Alexander gets a sack. Incomplete Justin Fields pass. Gorgeous sidearm throw for a touchdown, Fields to Ruckert. So overall, strong showing from the Giants defense in the red zone, which is really important. Again, I know we've all talked about this, but to actually see it, especially in a practice like this, the thing about the Jets this year with Aaron Glenn as their head coach is that they're full on tackling at their practices, which the Giants are not doing. And we can argue over whether or not that's right or wrong. Ultimately, teams do things differently, and we'll find out during the regular season and based on players' injuries, whether or not that was the right decision. But we know this, the Giants aren't doing it. It is is what it is. So it doesn't really surprise me that there were some issues with the Giants during the practice, because the Jets have been playing significantly more physical since day one of practices, where the Giants are not used to tackling, are not doing this kind of thing. The players barely started, or the starting players barely played on Saturday versus the Bills. So what is going to be really important is if they play all the starters on Saturday, and that's the number one thing that I'm looking for, is how do they play and how do they bounce back? And do they bounce back tomorrow from this practice? All right, so some highlights from the defense. Number one, Dexter Lawrence was out on the field. He chased Fields down on his throwaway, and then Connor Hughes said it always impresses me how fast he is for a big man, which I second that. More highlights from the Giants defense here. So this was the Jets starting offense versus Giants starting defense. Bad pass from Fields, it was high. Next play, throwaway, short Breece Hall run, sack on fourth down. Everyone was around him, not sure who ended up getting the sack. This is from Connor Hughes. Fields is 0 for 4 passing with 3 sacks. Burns, and everyone else. Only 2 plays gained yards, 10 attempts. Both were short haul runs. Very good showing from the Giants defense. One thing I wanted to say with this too is I saw another tweet, and we've also talked about this, because I think we've all seen it at some point, is that Brian Burns is an absolute psychopath on the field. And I mean that in the best way. Like, whether it's practice, OTAs, or a live game, he's the same person every time. The intensity level is through the roof for him. And I love that. I want it to be that way for all the Giants players. And we've talked about this, the reason why they drafted certain players and they're focused on the dogs and things like that. Like, the personality, these are the players that they're bringing in. But Brian Burns is always a perfect example of that. Again, whether it's practice or a game, he's going full steam ahead, 100% effort every single time. And I need him to teach Tay Banks how to do that, because from what I understand, Tay Banks had a really bad day, and I want to find that tweet for you guys too. Another one from Connor Hughes. Justin Fields has completed 3 straight passes to Garrett Wilson. Deontay Banks covering him, still struggling with that assignment. So again, I'm not there, so I don't know. Did at some point Cordell Flott come in? Was there a rotation there? Was Banks just getting smoked throughout the whole rest of practice? Questions that I have that I would like answered. Here is the first start to Justin Fields' day, because the consensus that I got was that both offenses made some nice plays, whether it was in 11-on-11s or the red zone, and then they also had some really horrible runs, again, whether it was 11-on-11s or the red zone. Justin Fields is having a very good start today. His only incompletion on a great pass on a deep ball in Josh Reynolds dropped it. That was very oddly worded. He's 12 of 13, 5 of 5 in 11-on-11, dicing up the Giants secondaries, but one of those completions was an Abdul Carter sack. So again, is this Tay Banks every time? Is Paulson and Debo getting smoked? It sounds like the consensus across the board was that Banks was part of the issue today, and he did not have a very good day, which is probably not surprising to many of us. And we've got a couple more updates here from 11-on-11s. The second opportunity was Justin Fields with the starter. Fields incomplete, pass over the head of Tyler Johnson. Braylon Allen loses 2. Brian Burns with the tackle for loss. And then Brian Burns gets a sack. He beat Membo, play called dead. So they ended up having to punt. But that's the consensus. I don't think I need to read through any more tweets. I think you guys get it. But I think the one constant thing that we're seeing is this Giants defensive line is going to be as good as we all expected it to be, possibly even better. That's a really good thing when we're talking about the defense, especially knowing that we haven't seen a lot of Dexter Lawrence, and I am sure that he only played a few snaps today. And then, if they do a nice job stopping the Bills offense, they do a nice job slowing down the Jets defense, so they just have to continue to build on that. The concern again here is I think about the secondary. And, again, I think the consensus is it's less about Paulson Adebo. When he's going up every day against Malik Neighbors in camp, he's just never going to win that one-on-one battle consistently. And it's not him, it's probably every corner in the NFL. So I don't expect him to be perfect every time. But the concern really is Banks, and it's really disappointing because, he has the opportunity to really have a bounce back year this year. And, when I hear things like from Carl Banks on the broadcast that he didn't like his body language after the play and he seemed like he was in his head and he couldn't figure it out for the next play, like, that's not good. Like, you can't do that at the NFL level in year 3 when you're an extremely vital piece to this team. And the other thing that's so concerning is Cordell Flott is not really better than him. So I think we talked about this already, but watch the Giants to see who they pick up on waivers. We're going to keep talking about that, see who's available. I also saw a tweet that said that Joe Shane was watching all of the Jets players very closely in drills and things like that. Again, they have the third pick on waivers, so they're going to have the opportunity to potentially bring in a pretty good football player who I'm sure will be a cornerback. So I will be at practice tomorrow, like I said, so stay tuned. I'm going to do my best to keep focused on the Flott Banks rotation, on the offensive line rotation. If any of the tackles goes down, who is the first one that's in there? Darius Alexander had a sack today. Can he build upon that? And, a little bit more of the secondary with the safeties too. How do they get involved? And does the offense have a better day today or tomorrow, than they did today? So stay tuned. A lot more coming your way. Hit the subscribe button for more.